I'm going to ask those members that need a little bit of extra assistance at the food tables to start now. Before the motzi, work your way over. And Rabbi Eron, I wondered if you would do the motzi for us, Rabbi Eron.
I sure will.
All right.
I always wanted to do that. Okay, folks, what do we have here? We're here together, and this is a particularly significant meeting because it is our meeting before the American Festival of Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving is really the concept that's behind Hamotzi. Every time we sit down to eat, our tradition calls upon us to be thankful, to consider our blessings, and to be gracious to all those who have brought this food to us and given us the opportunity to eat, and hopefully nourish not only our bodies, but as we are here, also our spirits and our souls. We can't thank everyone, so we make it easy. We thank God, the one behind everything, and hopefully the message gets through. So please join me first in Hebrew and then in English as we give thanks for the food, for the fellowship, for all that nurtures us, body and soul. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Amen. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, sovereign of all, who has brought forth bread from the earth. Amen. B'te'avon, eskazintahei.
Welcome everyone to the November Thanksgiving meeting of the South Jersey Men's Club. David, how's that for an introduction? Good? I want to ask Rob Sachs if he would take a minute. We have a custom, long-standing, from what I understand, probably predates me, of helping people with minions when they don't belong to a synagogue or need someone to help them with a minion. And I know we have a few people who are capable of running a minion. I know Marty is. Not sure who else. Who else? Rich Moskowitz. We're looking for a couple more. If you're capable of running a minion, could you raise your hand? Would anybody? We don't get Rabbi Eron. I think that probably makes sense.
We had him on the list already.
Okay. If you are capable of running a minion, we don't get many requests, but we did turn one down recently because no one was available that evening. So it's a nice service for people who, do not have someone to run a minion for them. If you would see Rob Sachs, he will put you on the list if you're capable. If you're almost capable, I'm sure someone could bring you up to speed. Thank you. Rob, any?
It will not only be a mitzvah, but Bernie Platt has offered to make a donation to us so we can pass it on to one of our charities, which I think will work out well. And unfortunately, we're running out of people, as an old guy can say this, of people that can do a minion. But we have a volunteer who's going to help us and train us. I'm volunteering my kid brother because he's not here. He'll probably kill me when he gets back, but he's very well educated. Guys, think about it. Sign a piece of paper. It's not a commitment for life. And we can help these people out that don't have family left to do it. Enjoy your brunch and breakfast and brunch.
Again, I want to mention our December 8th honoring of Dick Knopf. If you haven't given Stan your check or you haven't thought about it, think about it. I think we have 16, 18 people, Stan, already? Something like that? Yeah, we have a nice turnout. It's a nice affair. We attended the one last year. It was on the other side of the river. I don't remember exactly where, but it was very nice. It's a buffet dinner. It's at-will seating, so there's no table set seatings. You don't have to worry about making a reservation or anything. Stan, do you want to give us a quick overview of dues collections and number of members and so forth? Is there anyone here today who hasn't paid their dues? I know you're not going to be too quick to raise your hand, but if you have, if you haven't paid your dues, and we go through the list and find out that you're here, we're going to have you ejected. No, seriously, you need to pay your dues. There's about maybe 15, Stan? 14. 14? I think we just shamed somebody into paying their dues. Anyway, if you would, please, don't ask Stan to keep chasing you for you.
From last meeting.
What's that?
Hasn't changed much from last meeting.
Hasn't changed much, okay. We are over 100 members, I think, is that correct? Over 100? Without the ball players, and then we have some ball players who join up in March or April, so we'll definitely be quite a bit over 100. Nelson, do you want to take a minute and tell us about cards for veterans, I believe, not for veterans, for active duty.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Hey, thank you for answering me. I wasn't sure if you were paying attention. It's always a pleasure to be here. And this particular session that we're talking about is since around 1990, the first Gulf War, the Jewish War veterans in South Jersey Men's Club have been together and sending cards, Hanukkah cards, to the troops overseas. Okay, this year we've already did it because the deadline was to get some cards in, I think about a week and a half ago. Sent about 350 cards overseas. Okay, just think about that, being overseas in probably a Muslim country, receiving Jewish cards for Hanukkah. That's fantastic, and I thank everybody that participated in that. We're going to have a Hanukkah party, a joint base Hanukkah party, McGuire, Dix, Lakehurst, on December 23rd. Actually, Hanukkah starts then at 3 o'clock. I'll get some more information to you as we get closer to that point. But in preparation for that, I have some cards I'd like you to fill out. I'm not going to hand them out now because we have other things going on, but they're going to be on this table at the end of the meeting. Please come to the table, put a little note on there to the troops at the joint base, and we'll get them to those troops. But just really fast, and I know I'm going to get the hook in a second or two. What we did, Mike Perloff and myself, is actually go to the local Jewish schools, and we got hundreds and hundreds, maybe up to 500 cards from the little kids. Some of these are fantastic. Again, think about it. If you're overseas and you receive these cards and they all have our stamp on the back where they can send us an email message of thank you, it just makes you feel great. It makes you feel at home, especially with the Jewish community. So if you want to take a look at these, they'll be on the table. And thank you all for participating in this.
Thanks, Nelson. Don, you want to say something about fantasy football, as much as I don't want to hear it?
Ed is not in first place. Where's Ron Ettinger? Ron, why don't you stand up? Right now, Ron is in first place. With 2 weeks left in the regular season, almost all of the teams still have a shot at the playoffs. We start our playoffs with week 14 of the NFL season. If you're interested for next year, I'll be glad to take your name. We have 14 teams and over 30 guys involved with fantasy football. It's a heck of a lot of fun, regardless of how you do. Okay, so, yes.
We should recognize Bob, because until last week, he was in first place.
Well, yes, I will take you one step further. I'll recognize Bob and Rich because they are currently in second place. So, tied, by the way, with yours truly. So.
Yeah, but you're in third place.
Yeah. But thank you.
Hey, yeah, who's in last place?
All I have to say is it's a heck of a lot more fun when you're in the first, second, or third place.
How about fourth or fifth?
Fourth or fifth is probably okay. 6 teams make the playoffs, so if you're up in that range, you may be playing for something in week 14. I know I won't be playing for anything in week 14.
And let me just mention, every team will be getting money back, because if you win, even 1 week, you get $5 back. So every team, even the 14th place team, will be getting money back.
I have a challenge for the teams that are doing as well as I'm doing, which isn't very well. I have a challenge for you. Whatever we win, let's think about donating it to the food bank. I'm in on that. If you let me know at the end of the season before Don sends the checks out, let's see if we can get together $100. I know I'm probably at $20 or $25 right now. See if we can get at least $100 together for the food bank.
Speaking of the food bank.
Okay, yep. Thank you, Mike. I'll do it. Mike got a call, I think today, from Donna at the food bank. They got a big shipment of food in and could use some help tomorrow, Tuesday? Tomorrow. 10 a.m., probably. 10 a.m., hour, 2 hours, whatever. If you have the time, at the food bank, Route 70. If you've been there before, you know where it is. If you haven't, you can see me or Mike or Marty. Most of us know where it is. To probably sort some food, put it on the shelves, and so forth. We're still collecting food every week. When you come to a meeting, if you want to bring a can or two or a box, whatever.
Eyeglasses.
I got it, Ed. I'm a little slow today. Eyeglasses, toiletries, books, whatever. We collect them over at the side table. Let me see. Did I forget anybody? Yes? No. Science history. You want to come up and tell us about your trip to science history? We can't keep Mike off the podium. There's no way. He's got to at least come up once.
And in conclusion, okay, first, before I do talk about that, it seems like a lot of folks don't know, if you have an IRA, there's something called an IRA charitable rollover gift. Let's assume that you give to, pick something, your synagogue. You pay your dues. Let's say you give $1,000. Well, that costs you $1,000 plus the taxes you had paid on that money, right? Let's say $300. But because of this, if you have an IRA and you do a charitable rollover gift, you can designate the money goes directly, not to you, you never see it, to the synagogue or any other charity, no taxes. So that it sounds too good to be true, but it's true. How many people have done this or intend to do it? How many wish they knew before? Okay. So in other words, if you give $10,000 to somewhere, and you could do it up to $100,000 total every year, and your spouse can do it also, it's you save whatever your tax rate is. It's in your pocket instead of being taxed first. Okay, so much for that. We had a trip to the Science History Institute a few weeks ago, and I think everyone who went, how much did they like it? When it was over, my wife and I have gone there a lot, so we left. Everyone else stayed and kept going through the museum. And they have 40, 50 different programs a year. Anybody who went want to say a few words? Yeah, come on up.
I'm Scott Anderson, and my wife and I went and joined a couple of the people that went and attended this event. It's really, I think it's a science and industry museum now. They combined about 2 years ago or something like that. Beautiful building right downtown in Philly. They had a lot of old equipment. I think one of the big tanks was something they made Gore-Tex out of. And then they had some old, a massive machine that did centrifuge and testing and a lot of different stuff. What I found really interesting, though, was the art. They had old paintings of alchemists, and they have a massive library of industry and chemical, if you ever need that information. And again, they did hand us a program that they have ongoing programs that you're more familiar with that seemed interesting, and we'll definitely be taking advantage of that. And it was nice to go to a function and be able to bring my wife along with me.
And it was free.
It was free.
It was free.
Donations accepted.
They had said $2 charge. You know, we were we were prepared to arrange loans for those of you that, you know, but they said never mind. So that's the kind of place it is. All right, thanks very much.
Thanks, Mike. I think we've covered all the speakers. All right, Dave Schwartz. Schwarz. Dave Schwarz will be introducing our speaker today. I'll take 1 second. I'm going to pass these around. Ed Silver brought them in. There's some photos. You can just pass them around from table to table. There's some photos of previous presentations to some of the charities that appeared in the Voice. If you get the Voice and have seen them, just pass them on to the next person.
Good morning. Before I ask Rabbi Eron to come up, I would like to just take one moment to tell you about our Little Lions Gate luncheon, second Tuesday of every month. 2 or 3 of us go and sit with the guys in the independent living wing, and they put out a lovely little couple sandwiches, a little buffet for us. We get there at noon. We're there usually an hour and a half, very informal. We get about 10, 12 guys from independent living. I like to take, again, 2 or 3 of us to the place and enjoy their company. I would like to thank Colonel Mellitz for, Nelson came and spoke to the guys about Veterans Day. That was the day before, and something about his career and what a great guy he is. But it was, I like to take someone with me because we do a couple different things. We do current events where we'll just take a newspaper and chat about what's going on in the country. I try to avoid that now. We had a fight broke out about immigration a couple weeks ago. But in any event, 2 or 3 of us go. I'd like to take a speaker. If any of you would like to go with us in this informal luncheon, please tell me, give me your name and what you might like to talk about. And Nelson, again, thank you very much.
The food was good.
The food was very nice, and Nelson's presentation was terrific. Thank you. Rabbi Eron, please come forward and welcome.
Well, welcome everyone, and it is always a pleasure and a challenge to be speaking in front of the men's club, because I'm usually in the back, way in the back, drinking coffee and figuring out if I have the willpower not to eat the cookies. So thank you for bringing me up front and picking me further from the cookies and the coffee. So that is a blessing right away. So I'm here really to talk about, in a very specific sense, a book of mine that came out about 10 months ago, which is a spiritual biography theology, really talking about, what my faith is and how I understand the relationship of God and the human being, or the individual and God. And I was told to say a few words about myself before I began, so I will tell you all about myself, and if it takes more than 40 minutes, please tell me to slow up. So, in some way, the book is how did I get to and what did I discover who I am religiously and spiritually, but that is really grounded in who I am in terms of those dull details of a resume. So I'll give you the brief biography. I am not a native of South Jersey. It is terrible. I grew up in northern New Jersey, up in Bergen County. So I grew up in a place where Phillies fans were legendary. No one could believe they existed in the 1950s and 60s. And I remember just how excited I was. I was at the JCC camps in Milford, PA, and I met a young man from Cherry Hill. I guess we were maybe in third grade, that's somewhere between third and fourth grade at summer camp. And he was the first Phillies fan I ever met. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was miraculous that these things existed. I thought they were like unicorns, and at that point on, I believed in God. I did not expect to ever be here in South Jersey. There are a lot of things I didn't expect in life, but in my dreams growing up, New York was my city. There wasn't another. If you didn't speak as if you came from Bergen County, you probably had a speech deficit. Till I say that, I was as parochial as everyone else. Went to Northern Valley Regional High School in Demarest. Go Norsemen. We just had our 50th reunion. And yeah, just all 50th. Yeah, what are you on, your 90th, Mike? And after that, I went to Baltimore to college, went to Johns Hopkins, and I studied history, particularly ancient history, and minored in writing. After that, I went to Yale for a couple years to study Semitic philology, that is dead languages related to Hebrew. After doing that for a couple years, I decided it was pretty silly to be able to be great in Hebrew, ancient Hebrew, and related languages, and not to be able to order hummus in Jerusalem. So I went and I studied in Israel for over a year at the Hebrew University. I came back, then able to order hummus in a restaurant, and started my rabbinic studies at the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, and continued my graduate work at Temple University. Finished the go Temple. That's it. Go Owls. Did they win yesterday? I didn't check this morning. They lost. Oh. Yale won.
Yale won, yeah.
Wiped Harvard. Yes. Bula bula. That's why we're blue, right? Needless to say, after that, I became a rabbi. Graduated in 81, finished my doctorate at Temple in 87. It was in ancient, the relationship between early Judaism and early Christianity, and I focused primarily on ethical teachings. Was a rabbi here in South Jersey at Temple Har Zion in Mount Holly, which is a wonderful synagogue. I encourage everyone to go to any synagogue, but it's really a lovely, sweet place. I try to get there now that I'm retired at least once a month. And I spent some time there, went up to northern New Jersey, was the rabbi at Temple B'nai Abraham in Livingston, New Jersey, and came back down here about a quarter of a century ago when our community chaplain, Rabbi Mel Glatt, passed away. I don't know if any of you remember Mel, but he was a very kind and gentle soul. Until that time, until I came back here, my focus was primarily either academic or being a pulpit rabbi. Coming down here, in some ways I had to change gears and took over this job as community chaplain, and a chaplain at then the JGH, which, as you know, evolved into Lionsgate. And please, go over and join the men's club auxiliary at Lionsgate. Really see the men there. They really appreciate just our being here. So thank you, Dave, for doing that. It's really an important thing that we do. But part of being a chaplain, I think part of being a rabbi, I think part of being a mensch is sort of interacting with people, learning to listen to people, and learning to listen to oneself. One of the big challenges is, particularly in chaplaincy, but we feel it wherever we are, we deal with people who are asking the big questions, who are confronted with the challenges of life, who, because of their particular circumstances, have to confront the ultimate questions that confront all of us, that we often conveniently put in the back pocket or in a far corner. We know they're there. Questions that are important for our social and spiritual well-being. And those are questions of what's life all about? Now, early on in chaplaincy training, hopefully in rabbinic training in general, hopefully in just menschlichkeit training, we should be taught that it is the question, not the answer, that is significant. That we should understand that when someone asks that question, they're not looking particularly for my answer. They're looking for a way of finding an answer that works for themselves. I don't know if I'm being particularly clear, but I think it's really important. When people talk about questions of meaning, it's not something that I can give them. It's something that they have to discover. And the best that we can do for our friends, our children, or everyone we meet who are in those points of life where these questions become particularly acute, is to take them seriously and to help them find their answer. That is a really tough thing to do if we don't know where we stand. If we are floundering, we can't help anyone else. If we are lost in our own search, we can't be there to help another person because we are too lost, confused, frightened, and insecure. So part of the goal, I think, in chaplaincy service, rabbinic service, and I think any menschlichkeit service is for us to be grounded, to know what we stand for, where we are, so that from a place of relative security, we can listen to other people's insecurity. That isn't to mean that we have to be as grounded as the Rock of Gibraltar. I climbed that recently. It's a lot of fun. They have the Barbary apes on the top. If you're grounded on the Rock of Gibraltar and you're standing firm, when the Barbary ape jumps on you to look into your pack, you don't fall over. But if you're not secure, you're tumbling down the mountain with the monkey. But that's really how it is. You're not going to be as firm as the rock, but you can have your feet right down there. You can have an idea of what you believe and what you hold. And you can listen to the things. Listen to the questions and not be afraid. If one has undergone this process of trying to discover what one believes and what one stands for, one also understands the process. One knows what one's partner is perhaps dealing with, knows what the questions are, knows what the obstacles are, knows what causes the fear, and knows that answers perhaps are not ultimately available in an absolute sense, but are there at least along the way. So it's really a big challenge. And that's sort of the origin of this book. I wanted to articulate in a way that made sense to me what I believed as a Jew, how I understood the divine, to get in a clear sense where I am after well over 60 years of life. So that was the process. The book took about, I would say, ultimately maybe about 20 years to get out. I was doing other things. And it started originally in a dialogue, a Jewish-Christian dialogue, particularly a dialogue between Jews and Episcopalians that was run by the Board of Rabbis of Greater Philadelphia. And we met for about 4 years. And 1 year we talked about theological issues at a sort of broad academic theology. And then we talked 1 year about scriptural interpretation. And then 1 year we talked about our own faith. And we were called upon to write an essay and then bring it before the group. So the origins of this book is that essay of who I am and what I believe. And then over time I developed it, I worked on it. I learned a lot more about myself and about other people and their struggles. I learned who I was spiritually and what I do well and what I don't do well. I don't do guided meditation well at all. And I don't like chanting. That gives me a headache. I don't like most music. I just don't. I'd hate to say it. I do like sitting quietly. I do like studying. I do like walking outside. And I try to figure out where I connect. Now that's very individual, that's very personal. Where do I get my strengths? Where I can go and where I can't go. And that's also part of this self-knowledge. There are going to be places and people that we are not as yet capable of dealing with. So as a chaplain, one needs to know that. As a rabbi, one needs to know it. As a bench, one needs to know that. Some of us can go to hospital, some of us can't. Some of us can deal with the people dealing with severe mental illness. Others can't. Some can deal with sick children, others can't. You can go down the whole list. Some people can deal with hunger, some people can't. And it's also okay to know where you can't go. So what does God have to do with this? God, in my sense, is at the core of our search of meaning. But before I want to talk about God, let me just give you a few guidelines that has helped me over time in thinking about what God is. Number one, everything I know about God is probably wrong. That's like a given. In fact, whatever God is probably beyond human knowledge, and that in the best way, any description of God that a person has is at best an approximation. I remember when I was studying philosophy, as part of my graduate program, one of the challenges facing medieval thinkers, Jewish, Christian, and Muslim, who had a strong belief in God, was the sense that it's a sort of a funny analogy. Do you remember maybe in the SATs it was like A is to B is C is to D, and you know A, B, and C, but you didn't know D and you could figure it out? Well, when it comes to God, it's like A is to B as C is to D. I know A, I know B. I have no idea what C is and how I'm going to figure out what D is. Just can't get there. So, next thing to know is whatever I think about God, whatever you think about God, whatever anyone thinks about God, when they start talking about God, they're revealing more about themselves than they are about God. They're telling, I'm telling you or you're telling me, you know what we as individuals might think is most significant, what we might think is most important, what we might think is most crucial. Next thing. What we know about God comes not necessarily from our reason, but from our experience. Both our personal experience and our cultural experience. And as Jews, we have, at least, let's say 3.8 thousand years of cultural experience. And you can push it back a little more because Abraham wasn't born into an empty world. The world was civilized for 5,000 years before Abraham ever showed up. So we have a lot of experience, lots of cultural baggage, lots of cultural gifts that help us affect the way we think about God. But it's really talking about experiences. Next thing, God is a word. Whatever it is, the word, it's a word. And we're the ones who give meaning to words. And the meanings we give to words come out of our personal experience and our cultural experience. If you don't like thinking about God as a word, think about family. What is a family? Is it always the same? Do different cultures define family in different ways? I can go through all sorts of words. What is a forest? What is its value? What does it mean? What is gravity? Do we always understand gravity the same way? Now, we always know, I like gravity, because we always know since the beginning of human consciousness, we knew if you dropped a rock and it would fall.
There you go.
See? An example. When I drop my prayer book, I kiss it, thanking God for the miracle of gravity. Because if it were not for gravity, we wouldn't be here. But what is gravity besides things falling? Why do things fall? Well, if you lived before Newton, things fell. They always fell. But people define falling differently. Good Aristotelian definition is there's natural movement to the center. And when the earth is the center of the universe, things will naturally fall. And you need a miracle or divine intervention or some other things to keep things floating around in circles, in perfect motion around the earth. So they don't fall, but things fall. Now Newton comes, things still fall, and we have a different definition. Does anyone remember their high school physics well enough? I don't. To go, doctor.
9.8 meters per second squared.
Yes, and why do they fall?
They're being pulled.
Pulled. Does everything have gravity?
Yes.
Yes.
Mass attracts.
Good. Now if you're going into a post-Einstein universe, we get a different understanding of gravity, but things still fall. So we talk about things falling and describe them in different ways. God may also function in that way. Basic human experiences always remain, but the context in which we experience those, in which we live those out, the world, the social, political, economic worlds in which scientific worlds in which we live those out, change. the way we use the words change, and the way we understand fundamental concepts will also change. So the way you might use the word God probably shouldn't be the same way that a person 200 years ago used it, or 2,000 years ago used it. Similar, but not exactly the same. That's sort of frightening. The next thing is that I believe, at least for Jews, every Jewish person should take the idea of God seriously. Taking the idea seriously is different from believing. In fact, I'm not so sure what believing is all about. I do know what taking ideas seriously is, thinking about them, working them through my mind and my heart and what I do. And I think as a group here, what we saw today, all that stuff that preceded me in some way was more important than what I'm talking to you about, because that was manifestations of what I would consider that energy that connects us to the divine to make this world a slightly better place. Can't change it, but we're all putting in a little bit. So, I'm going to continue, but if you have questions at any point from now on, please feel free to interrupt. You're much better. When I was at Lionsgate, I could get about 2 minutes in before they started interrupting, and you've given me about 20. So thank you so very much. So let me talk to you a little. Yes?
Something that's been bothering me recently.
Yes.
I think we're having some problems at the universities, even at the high school levels, because we don't have God discussed by the professors, discussed by the high school teachers. Is that something that impacts society when you don't discuss God? And I know there's different gods, etc.
I think the problem is those people who want to talk about God think that they have the goods on God. If you think you have the goods on God, at least from my point of view, that's a form of idolatry. Because you've defined God, you've put God in a box, you can carry it around, and that's not the type of God we want. That's the God of the golden calf. So part of our discussion of it is that the people who want to talk about God often have that limited sense of God, and to talk about what is lasting, what is divine, what is powerful is something that people are often afraid of doing. It's afraid of offending, but it's also people are pretty scared because it's going to what one's values are. So let me just sort of work on that a little bit more. There's a Jewish rabbinic expression is that a person who doesn't believe in God cannot be a good person. By what I think they mean is if you don't have principles, you can't be a good person. The unprincipled person is by definition not good. And in some way what I think they're talking about in that little sense is that God is equivalent to those principles on which we try to build our lives. And within the Jewish tradition, I believe we move to a point that anything that makes this world better, improves this life of everyone else, and cares for creation, that's a fundamental founding principle and connects us to the God who our tradition imagines as the creator of all. But without principles, you can't be good. Find your first principles. So I think in a broader sense, it's not talking about God, it's talking about what are the basic principles of life, that education is to teach us how to be human beings more so than to teach us skills.
So it's terminology. If you take the word God out of it, perhaps the professors can't discuss the principles.
And people don't do that now because we want to be able to get the technological information and not understand what it is. So at one time, education was primarily moral education.
Yeah.
To teach you how to be a good citizen, how to be a virtuous human being. Jewish education was always how to be a mensch. And if you look through the Jewish tradition, it always ends up in how to be a mensch. Wherever you're coming, if you're a mystic, if you're a philosopher, if you're a halachist, Jewish law person, it's always how to be a mensch. Yeah. Bob.
I'm 84 years old, and I had always belonged to a conservative synagogue. My wife wanted to belong to this Reformed synagogue. That's where we are now. I mean, I can read Hebrew and so forth and so on, but I'd like to know, I understand, whether the prayers and whether the things are different today in these synagogues than it was, let's say, 20, 25 years ago, as far as the prayers and the conducting and what goes on.
That's a really good question. That talks about really how our ideas about life, religion, spirituality change over time. And the answer is, thank goodness, yes. That things keep changing. You're not the same guy you were 40 years ago. You're not listening to the same music you were listening to 40 years ago. You may actually own something like this and be able to use it for other than a paperweight. So, of course it changes. Our music changes, our synagogue music changes. The essential Hebrew prayers have remained the same, but we understand them in different ways, as you can see how the translations nuance different themes. If you look at prayer books, and Jews always love annotated volumes. If you ever picked up a traditional Jewish text, you have the text in the middle, and then you have people's comments on the other side, outside, and then some more comments, and then a margin, and you're really encouraged to read any Jewish text with your own pen, except on Shabbat, and put in your own notes. So there's always that sense of communication. So if you look at Jewish prayer books now, and look at the annotations, they're different from what they were in the past. And right now, each of the movements in North America have produced prayer books with really nice commentary. Jews have always added additional readings and prayers to our prayer service. One of the problems with Jews and the Jewish culture is that we are sort of a hoarder culture. We add things, but we don't take them out. So if you spent 8 hours in synagogue over the high holidays, you felt yourself lucky because you know it could have gone the full 12 or 24 because the prayer book is this thick, because we kept putting things in. So the answer, yes, is yes, things change. Yes, I change. And I'm not going to be necessarily comfortable anymore in the synagogue I grew up in. And I don't expect a generation after that what I'm doing right now is going to really hit people on the head. So that's really a problem. Part of the general problems, I think, of religion is religion moves slowly. Part of what religion does is try to conserve values and conserve traditions, and we're living in a society that's moving very, very rapidly. So it's really difficult for the religious institutions, as what religion is supposed to do, is to maintain culture, values, and symbols in a world that's moving really fast. So that perhaps accentuates the feeling. Wow, great question. Bernie.
With the deterioration of so many things in our world, all of the changes and all the upheavals, is that because we're not as religious as we used to be, or we should even going to the synagogues and the churches? And the thing that bothers me is people they weren't looking at all the things that God can do. And it's just very sad. I see, I'm only 77 years old, so I'm a young person. I just see so many deteriorations in so many different areas, and it's upsetting.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to put something out, and put this out. Human life has always been terrible. Human beings, all the miserable things human beings do now, we did in the past. In some way, we're living in a much safer world in all different levels than we ever did. We listen to the news every night and learn about how many people get shot in Philadelphia. However, Philadelphia today is much safer in every level than it was during the colonial period, even though their pistols only had one shot. How many of us walk around with swords for decoration? How many, we are much more in some ways concerned about public health, about protection. One of the things we have here in this world is, unfortunately, if something happens bad, any place in the world or any place in the country, I know about it in a minute. If I lived 200 years ago, the only thing I would know about was anything that happened within walking distance of my home. So here I am, comfortably in whatever they called Cherry Hill 200 years ago. Someone gets shot in Philadelphia. It'll take me 2 weeks to figure out that that happened. I just don't know about it. So we have the knowledge. But look at read literature. Think about the world. You've read Shakespeare. Shakespeare, what's a Shakespearean tragedy? They talk about a Greek tragedy, the hero dies. A Shakespearean tragedy, everyone dies.
The Shakespearean comedy is they're alive at the end.
They're all alive at the end and they're pregnant.
And they get married.
And they get married, which also may be a tragedy. So that's a really thing. But I think part of it is that as individuals, we need to talk about who we are, what we believe in. And I think using the word and using religious language, spiritual language, gives power and connection to it. So I feel that the choices I try to make in life are to manifest what I feel the divine is all about. Not that I do that right all the time, but that's sort of what I want to do, and that's the type of person I want to be. That in some way, the way I listen to a person, the way I talk to a person, when I want to interact, I want to think, how does this make what I think is holy and blessed and wonderful present in my life and in this experience and in this relationship. One more question, then I want to go on and talk a little bit more about the book.
Where do you see conservative Judaism going with intermarriage? Young people nowadays, the Jewish young people, they're interested more in their cell phones and communications by technology. Which way is it going?
Well, I hope that Judaism in general, and the various movements in particular, find ways to see these as opportunities. We're not going to stop what the world is doing. Yeah. People didn't hop necessarily up and down when they first got radios or TVs. Any technological change is frightening. Those of us who remember our European history from college and from maybe high school know what the invention of the printing press and paper did for communications and how it changes things. I could give you all sorts of wonderful stories about how every little technological change affects everything, including coffee. Coffee changed Jewish spirituality from, yes, it's really interesting. Before people had coffee, we got tired. We didn't have good sources of caffeine. So that the significant spiritual points would be at dawn and at sunset. with the invention of coffee and cheap candles, people were able to stay up later at night, and we're able to do things like have salichot services, and midnight becomes a more significant point. Just a cup of coffee. You can talk about how sugar affects our economy. Tea time enabled British manufacturers to give their workers a little shot of caffeine and sugar so they could pump another 5 hours out of them. I mean, there are all these little things that every little twist does it. So yes, if we're smart and if we're good, we won't go, oh dear, it's changing, but wow. And I bet you like your cell phone too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It does.
it's a pretty good thing.
Right.
You know, I have a sister in Japan, and I could wake her up right now. I mean, it's really,
You came over here.
it's really nice. So, I want to talk a few minutes about what I'm trying to do in this book, and so let's see what's probably the best way of doing it. I'm going to read you from the official thing, why I wrote this book. So here I started. Theology is a dance of mind and heart, with neither leading, but both responding to each other as together they spin and turn and circle through life. Theology is a beautiful dance, and though its steps and rhythms vary from dancer to dancer, we do not dance alone. If our arms are open, we can find partners and teachers whose steps match our own. Serving the Jewish community as a rabbi and chaplain, I soon discovered that I was more than a theological dancer. People began calling on me to guide them in their dance, and I felt that choreographing others' dances without being able to describe my own would be irresponsible. Therefore, I embarked on an exploration of my faith, hoping to bring clarity to my Judaism. This search gave birth to my new book, I Am, A Journey in Jewish Faith, my attempt to examine and articulate the spiritual and theological foundations upon which my life as a Jew and my work as a rabbi rest. Since my goal was to describe my personal faith, my search started at a point where people first turned to God, at a moment of prayer. I began my investigation with the Shema, the 6-word declaration of Jewish faith, because it was among the first Hebrew prayers I learned. And it is a prayer that still plays a central role in my prayer life as a member of the Jewish people. Although prayer forms the heart of my book, this book is neither a prayer book nor a book about prayer. It is an exploration of God that focuses on the relationship between God and the individual believer, and on the commonalities that bind them together. I have divided this book, I Am, into 12 chapters. Each considers a different aspect of faith. Each one through the lenses of the Shema. Since theology draws both on the mind and the heart, I have tried to balance the emotional with the intellectual impact of my search by beginning each chapter with a poetic reflection on the chapter's theme. I Am begins with a discussion of my discovery of the unique God through the exploration of my own uniqueness. The book goes on to explore issues of Jewish peoplehood, the significance of Scripture, the power of prayer, and the meaning of religious practice. My spiritual search grows out of my personal religious experiences. Thus, my book has its roots in the practices and beliefs of late 20th century, early 21st century liberal Judaism. However, I did not compose it only for a liberal Jewish audience, but for all who seek to make sense of their faith and belief. The issues it addresses, the nature and implications of an individual's relationship to God, to his or her religious traditions, and our created world are universal. My response to those issues draws its power from our Jewish tradition, but engages anyone in struggling with similar issues. So this is a book that starts with me and God. I am is who I am and who God is. And in some way, to put a summary to it, I like to think about it with this image. That of a circle. A circle is what is a circle? You remember that from geometry. You may have your Euclidean geometry. We had it in sophomore year. Do circles have beginnings and ends? It's continuous, a continuous circle of points around a central point. God is the central point, and I am but one of the points on the circle. We need each other, for the circle doesn't exist without the center nor the periphery. God is the center. I'm, along with all of you here and all creation, along the periphery. But my little spot is unique. Wherever I am on that circle, no one else is there. Wherever I am on that circle gives me a particular view of the center. Knowing that my point is unique and special, looking at that central, unique and special point is perhaps all that I share with God. So starting to explore what it means to be a unique individual enables me to perhaps understand what it means to think about God, and hopefully then push it on to think about what God is as also being utterly unique, and how two unique things relate to each other. It was a really exciting process of writing the book. I deliberately made it short because I don't have a lot of sitzfleisch anymore to read thick books. But I do want to invite anyone who's interested in it to talk to me further. I have a few copies if you wish. I have also my card with my website, which has lots more information about the book, a summary, questions, and things like that. So I now see that the clock says 10 to 11, and I know that it is Thanksgiving weekend. We are all here by the grace of those people with whom we share a household who have let us out so we don't have to help prepare for Thanksgiving. And there's a game this afternoon. So we are all in some way probably required to do something to prepare for the forthcoming holiday. I want to wish everyone all the best. It should be a happy and joyous Thanksgiving. I pray that this Thanksgiving, like every Thanksgiving, is a time when we can get together as families, but also as a nation, and that at least for this weekend, all the troubles that have been bothering us can be put aside as we explore and rejoice in our similarities as Americans. So I want to wish everyone all the best, and thank you. Okay.
Rabbi, thank you. David, hold on one second. Hold on one second.
I get my certificate.
You get another certificate.
Another.
I think the rabbi has a collection of the certificates. Thank you very much for being our speaker. Wait.
Take the picture.
Let's put the rabbi's book
This is
up.
important. I hope you have a time and date on that, so it's my alibi.
Stay up with us. Stan, you want to come up and do the 50-50? Rabbi, if you'll do us the honor of picking the 50-50. While Stan's on his way up, we have 6 volunteers for food bank. For those of you who didn't sign up, who usually don't sign up, come with us tomorrow, 10 a.m. Show up. You don't have to sign up. You'll feel better after you leave, I'm sure. Regarding the Shiva Minions, we have 2 people who can lead. We have 2 who signed up who would like to learn how to lead. If you haven't signed up, if you're thinking about it, see Marty Raffner after the meeting and tell him to put your name on the list.
About the Shiva Minions, it's not hard to lead a Shiva Minion.
No.
You don't have to be an expert in Hebrew. What you need to do is to be self-confident enough to get in front of people who are experiencing a really difficult time. Every person in this room, I think, has the technical skills to lead a minyan, particularly since lots of the prayers can be recited in English. I think what we really have to do is do we feel confident enough and comfortable enough to lead the service? Is this a place where I want to go and I can go? And I'll be willing to help anyone do that, both as a group and as individuals, develop that sense of self-confidence, both in one's own innate skills and also in one's own innate menschlichkeit.
Do you want to let me get out of the way?
This is the first meeting in which I did not buy a raffle so that I would not have to recuse myself from this wonderful duty.
Stan, winning amount today, Stan?
Is 73.
$73 is the winning amount. The last 3 numbers on the ticket, last 3 numbers.
5. 2. 1.
Ticket for sale.
521.
There, our guest. That's nice. That's nice. Very good. You're our guest.
Yes. What's his name again?
I don't know.